Hi guys, how are you doing? Good.
Hello.
Good.
Hi.
Thanks for
So
having
to start, and we can just go round robin because that seems easier. With a movie like this that does have, essentially one set throughout the entire movie that we're kind of dealing with, what for you guys was the biggest challenge of making a movie like Bone Lake and having just like one location to kind of work through, even though it is a very large house?
I think it's a particular thing was making sure that our blocking felt different and the movie felt like a progression. Like as you'll see, even though we're in the same location, it starts out naturalistic and then it gets very giallo. And so even though we're in that space, we still wanted to feel like there was an evolution. And so we really looked at that through a design perspective.
Yeah, I mean, this poor lady in Atlanta who rented her house to us, had no idea the horrors that would be going on in her house. She kind of like she'd step in to set every few days, and she'd be like, "Oh, blood here, nice." Like there's an axe over here, and yeah, so poor her, but got paid.
She just saw a black sheet on the floor. She's like, "What's that one for?" She's like, "Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we pitched it as a romantic movie.
I mean, it is.
I
Yeah.
was going to say.
It is in its own way, yeah.
Yeah. And more. Yeah.
I think also the challenge of shooting a film in one location is also somehow a blessing in that sense, because it was just so nice for us to be the four of us, the five of us with Mercedes, in the same location, connected every day. So it kind of felt like kind of a theater company. We were able to bond and be together and work that place, because the house is almost a character in the film. It's the four of us plus the house. So in that sense, there's this amazing dynamic going on set every day with the four of us on the same location. It just creates this, we're all like always warmed up, and that's I think that's you can see that on the screen, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah. I echo that. I mean, I echo what everyone said, especially what Marco said. It was nice to just have that like one stable, comfortable place to just go back to day in, day out. And it did become like a character in its own way.
Yeah, and Mercedes, I want to ask you specifically. It is very funny that I'm talking to you guys today when literally another report came out where teens are like, no more sex in movies. I was like, well, maybe don't watch Bone Lake, guys. But it is like I love the use of sex scenes in this movie because every single one is telling you something about the character as you're watching it. And I think that's why I get so frustrated with the argument that like we shouldn't have sex scenes in movies. I'm like, no, because if they're good, they tell you about a character development. When you are filming something like this movie that you have the like quote unquote like sexy sex scene in comparison to the one that is really kind of telling you what these two characters are going through, how did you navigate as a director making sure like it came across as clearly as it does in the film?
Totally. I mean, I think each one of us had a lot of conversations about this because that's really important to have a lot of conversations going to this. But I also think that the way that I like to look at it is if you cut the sex scene out of the movie, could the movie still exist? So the best example of that is with Sage and Diego. When we first come into it and we meet them, they have a sex scene right away. And you can see on her face that she's not connected to him, but she's not saying anything. And so that's a very, very important scene to set up their dynamic. Or also when we go later on with the other couple and we see them having sex at the midpoint of the movie, we know it's because they are connected where we've thought that they're not. And so we needed to see that to be told that as the audience. And so that's kind of how I like to look at it.
Yeah.
Definitely as an actor, you read a script and you're like, is there a reason for this sex scene? And and then you can kind of, you're like, okay, that's part of the movie. Whereas if it feels just gratuitous, it's like that's an immediate turn off usually.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's why I was like, oh, this is a perfect movie to use as an argument against, like, whenever they're like, they're not necessary. I'm like, no, but they are. Like, look, this movie is a great example of how you can do a sex scene and make it make sense with character arc and all of that kind of stuff. But for Alexandra, you guys do have to play these multiple layered people. And I think it's so fun watching the arc that this couple kind of goes on. They matched each other's freak, and I think that's nice. But when you were playing characters that have all those layers, what for you guys is the most fun about like figuring out what they're showing of themselves to this other couple?
I mean, Alex, you and I got very granular with it. We really built them a strong backstory that I think helped because we were just on the same page like day in, day out. Um, and I think for me, it was also finding things in Sage and Marco's characters to build off of. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the first time that we met each other, speaking about the previous scene, the previous thing you're talking about the sex scenes and stuff too. We've got a rehearsal, which is the first time we meet each other, and it is like, they're inherently so awkward, because it's like this, this forced kind of building chemistry thing where you have to like dance around and stare at each other in the face. But like there was, I was kind of, thinking like I've been like, I'm over drama school. I'm too good for this, or like I'm too cool for this. And I remember there was a moment where I just locked eyes with Andra, and I was like, oh, she's sin right now, And so in that moment, I was like, okay, let's play. And it was like, then it just became about play. So, and I think that that's part of what that rehearsal process is it's to get you over, and that's like, why Mercedes set it up. It initially feels kind of awkward, but it actually really kind of helps you, build a chemistry with each other.
Yeah.
And Marco, what Diego's such a nice little boy at sometimes, and I'm like, this poor man is just like for a horror movie man, he's like a good dude for the most part. I was like, that's crazy. But like when you are playing in theory just a nice dude for most of this movie, what for you is the fun of to just be that in a movie like this, which it doesn't exist that often?
It's yeah, that was the funniest part actually. I feel like Diego is always a step behind, all of them, and it's about the dynamic. It's you get to know the characters through their relationship with other people, with either with the partners or with the people they just met, and the way they handle situations or terrifying situations. And it's funny because Diego is a super nice dude, but at the same time, he's so insecure and he's so looking for approval and so looking for love and so looking to be recognized that in the end, it's almost his fault that everything happens because he wants to get his writing read. He wants to get to this writer. He wants to succeed. He wants to prove Sage that he's actually capable of. And that's why they end up staying and everything ended up happening. So it's basically Diego's fault. But there's so much fun in playing a character like this, especially when it's like when you have such strong characters like Alex's character, Andra's character, even Maddie. She's the dominator, and Diego's just being pushed wherever everybody's going. And there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun in playing that. And in the end, the character ends up getting a lot of empathy from the audience. I think it's just like the only normal guy who's there, and we end up following him. It's like, what's going to happen with this guy? Like he's so lost. So it was so nice to see the reaction of the audience, towards Diego and how they embrace him. It was like, guy, come on, you gotta react. So it's lovely to play that in that space.
Yeah, and Mercedes, you guys give me one of my pet peeves in this movie, which is a person with fake glasses. Because as someone who I have had to wear them since I was a kid, the minute they're like, these glasses aren't even prescription, I was like, that's a villain. I was like, I forget everything else, that's a villain because they have fake glasses. But when you're doing those little things where it's like, clearly the glasses bit was a tactic, and like there's all these little tactics, but for you is the fun part as a director of like figuring that out as you guys go along. So then later when we have those beats, we're like, oh, that makes sense that all of that was fake or whatever it is.
Totally. That's something that came from the script level of us just making sure that you could go back and have enough clues. And something that I always like to analyze is I feel like really good, satisfying plot twists is you guess maybe 30 seconds before they happen in the movie because you've been given enough clues so you don't feel like the filmmakers are pulling it over your head. But if you just don't guess it at all, you just go, well, you just didn't set this up and it's just a twist to be a twist. So we wanted to make sure that was there. And it's funny because everyone guesses different plot twists because it's a very twisty movie. But we've been successful in having like everyone has at least one that they go, oh shit. And that's our goal. Yeah.
I love that you said that because that was me like with Challengers when he did the tennis ball thing. I was like, I figured this out like 2 minutes ago.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
but it is such a fun way of like looking at
Satisfying.
twists is that little gap where you have like 2 seconds to figure out if you got it or not. But
Yeah.
I also really love the like, I don't want to call it the battle of the sexes in this movie, but there are multiple scenes where it's like the two men have to go and like talk something out, and then the two women have to go and talk something out over here. And it's always funny when it is split between the men and the women because they're fighting about like Sage and Diego are fighting about something that is very serious, and then the response is not serious at all. When you guys as actors are like kind of dealing with like the knowledge that one couple has versus the anger of the other, what is the most fun as actors to get to kind of play in that? Is it the we're messing with them side of it, or is it the like I'm genuinely angry you stole my proposal, or like told all my family secrets side of things?
That scene works. I mean, I've seen this film with an audience like twice, I think, and that scene just works every time, and it's amazing. And it was the scene that we were most concerned about. I was terrified of that scene because that's a moment where my character would just walk away. Why do you stay? And that's when you gotta trust your partners. You gotta trust the director, and you gotta trust your partner. And Alex is just so fucking brilliant on that in that scene, like he's literally crying and I was so angry. And the more he was bringing truth to that, like even though he wasn't, the more angry I got. And that's why, you know, the dynamic of the scene worked. So it's just about trusting your partners and diving deep into this collaboration and see what, you know, what your partner is going to bring and how you're going to react to that. I love that scene. That's my favorite scene, actually.
Well, yeah, it's so funny because it's like you're right. Why is that man still there? That guy stole your ring, Andrew.
But he did it so real.
He's
You're
like,
right. Poor thing.
but Andre, you get to do so many fun things with both Diego and Sage, and like Alex, you also get to. But I do think you have a switch that is so fun to watch because she obviously interacts differently with Diego than she does Sage, and does kind of the like fake girl thing where she's like, oh my god, like tell me all your problems kind of thing. For you, what is it like when you're kind of mapping out how this woman is thinking about that stuff in those moments?
In those moments, I think Mercedes made it a very fun and safe environment to play. So we played around with like different approaches, like, you know, be a girl's girl and actually care and be empathetic, and no, be like a mean girl. And so there was so much freedom to play and explore. But I think regardless of the approach, it all came down to kind of what Marco said, finding the truth and just really just pursuing that truth, whatever it was. Like if she's a mean girl, okay, why am I a mean girl here? Like let me justify that and go all the way with it. And so it was fun to kind of explore all these different ways, but still just stick to the truth of whatever, you know, the approach was. But it was very fun because it was also a little bit of a challenge of what little Easter eggs can be dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's for a second watch after you kind of, you know, and without giving spoilers, but once you know what the situation is, to then go back and rewatch it, I think there's really entertaining little crumbs that have been left by both Will and Sin. Like it's kind of the whole time like kind of knowing that you're putting on an act, and it's super freeing because as an actor you're always trying to pretend, always trying to like show that you're not acting, You know, you're always trying to be as natural as possible, but you're playing this character who is, you know, spoiler alert, is, you know, putting on an act. It kind of frees you, because if if you are insincere or unbelievable in these moments, there's an excuse for it too. So it's like, you know, you don't have that like be naturalistic thing hanging over your head the whole time.
Yeah, and Mercedes, I do think there's so many cool like comparing shots in this movie that like the sex scene in the beginning of the movie, and it's the compared to the Sage and Diego one later, and then it goes back to that actual sex scene again. But when you have all of these shots kind of like storyboarded and mapped out, when you get to see them come to life as a director, how does it feel to like actually witness the like initial vision come to fruition like that?
So good. I literally have this whole movie basically storyboarded out in GIFs of me acting out a lot of it in the house, which is absurd. Because Nick Matthews, the DP, and I, when we were going around a location, we walked out and we go, okay, here we're walking to this room and you're the camera and followed around with me. And so to see actually great actors instead of me in the reference images is so wonderful and exciting. And it's just everyone just hauling ass the entire time to make it possible. We had a great crew.
And for my last question, because I love this movie, I don't want to spoil anything further than I already have. I want to ask you guys, now that I know you were in a little old lady's house doing crazy things, what for you guys was your most favorite moment of knowing like some little old lady is going to eventually watch this movie and have to see what we did to her home?
That ended up being the button on it. Mercedes?
Yeah, I mean, I think even beyond that is this woman had tons of boxes very organized and mapped out. And so we transported her entire life. And so I think that she might faint if she saw this movie. So I hope she does not see this movie. But
Because the house is returned totally as
yeah,
it was found. You know, like
of
that's part of
course.
the thing.
Yeah.
So all of this stuff has gone on, and I like, yeah. What would be the thing she would be the most shocked about?
I feel like the first room.
The first
Oh.
room, yeah.
Oh, you mean
Yeah.
the sex dungeon? Yes.
Room number one.
Yeah, I think
Room
she's
number
surprised
one.
at the sex dungeon. It's literally her storage.
And I hope that no trinkets from room number one.
Exactly.
It was funny to see the dynamic that in the beginning she was super excited and she wanted us to be there. She was like, "Oh my God, you're shooting film!" And she was so nice to have everyone. By day, she wasn't even saying good morning anymore. You walk up to her, was like, "Hi." She was like, so we're like, "Okay."
You were very kind. We lead
We
with
were, yeah.
kindness. It was just the nature of the beast. Yes.
Traumatizing old women left, right, and center to give own legs to all of us.
That's the headline. That's the headline right there.
But thank you guys so much for talking with me. I really appreciate it. And I really, really liked this movie a lot. And I can't wait for everyone to get to see it.
Thank you. Thank you for your good question.
Thank you. Have a great one, guys.